All right, let's dive in. Ever notice how we kind of judge actors by, well, how smart their characters seem?
You mean like we think the actor must be similar?
Exactly. We've got this source breaking down 10 actors who get that treatment, and man, some surprises on this list.
Yeah, it's easy to forget what we see on screen. That's just a performance.
Totally. And the first name, Jim Carrey.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Right. Comedic genius, but some of those early roles,
Yeah.
not exactly Mensa material.
But see, that's what's so cool about Carrey's career. He went from Ace Ventura all the way to Eternal Sunshine, total transformation.
Makes you think, how do actors break free from those first impressions?
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to that, got to start with someone basically defined by one persona, Pauly Shore.
Ah, the weasel.
Need I say more?
So deliberate, though, that persona, those mannerisms, the way he talked. Brilliant comedy.
But did it overshadow who he really was?
It can happen, yeah. Our brains, they love shortcuts. Pauly Shore equals the weasel. Done. But that shortcut might not lead to the truth.
Speaking of shortcuts, Chris Sarley, the energy crashing into stuff. Did people think, well, not the sharpest knife in the drawer?
It's funny, we undervalue physical comedy sometimes. Like it's all slapstick, no brains. But the timing, the body awareness, that's skill.
We forget there's a mind behind the chaos.
Yeah.
And sadly, with Farley, his genius kind of hid that he was actually super intelligent off screen.
For sure. What we see, it's just a sliver of the whole person.
Okay, ready for a twist. Steve Carell. Now, love The Office, but Michael Scott, bless his heart, not a Nobel Prize winner. Did it affect how people saw Carell's intelligence?
Happens all the time. Iconic role, hard to separate the actor. And Michael Scott, so well-meaning, so clueless. People wondered about Carell.
Like, come on, it's acting. But Michael Scott was so convincing, almost tricked our brains.
The paradox, right. Better the actor, more we believe the illusion.
All right, someone who shattered perceptions. Matthew McConaughey. Before the McConaissance, pretty much the king of rom-coms. Shirtless dude. All right. Did people think that's all there is to him?
His career, man, it's like a textbook case of image reshaping, a deliberate move to serious roles.
How'd he pull it off? Doesn't Hollywood just hand out Oscars to anyone who wants to be taken seriously?
He made choices, strategic ones, roles that showed his range, his depth, Dallas Buyers Club, True Detective, intensity, vulnerability.
And let's be honest, the charm helped. Subverted the himbo thing, turned it into something unexpected.
Took what people thought they knew, flipped it, bold move, paid off big time.
Yeah, another often underestimated guy, Ashton Kutcher. Early on, those dude characters, not exactly intellectual powerhouse role.
And yet, real life, Kutcher's a tech investor, entrepreneur, sharp mind for business. Our off-screen view, it colors the on-screen for sure.
We build these narratives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Few roles, some gossip. We think we got them figured out, but rarely the whole story, huh?
No. And it makes you wonder, how much are our biases at play? Judging the performance, or are we judging based on stuff that's got nothing to do with acting?
Lots to think about there. We'll dig more into that in part 2. But first, got to talk about Keanu Reeves. Internet darling, but also kind of an enigma.
Greaves, yeah, he's interesting. Critically acclaimed, but there's always been some skepticism too. Early on, the range, stoic, those facial expressions.
Yeah.
Memes even.
Right, whoa. Both on screen and off.
But then his career shifts. Roles with vulnerability, complex emotions, challenging himself as an actor.
Think The Matrix. Redefined action, right?
Yeah.
Physicality, but with that philosophical edge.
Yeah.
And John Wick, intense, but with this pathos.
Committed to his craft, Reeves pushing boundaries, showing depth people missed at first.
Speaking of overlooked, we got 3 more on our list, and I see a theme. Rob Schneider, early Brendan Fraser, mostly comedies, and Joe Pesci, same, the comedic roles,
Right.
all playing, let's just say, not the sharpest tools.
Interesting group. Makes you ask, do those comedic roles, do they make us think the actor's less intelligent? Laughing at them, not with them.
Is it that humor equals less serious, therefore less smart?
It's complex. In our culture, intelligence is serious, analytical, comedy, playful, spontaneous, absurd.
So we miss the brilliance behind the laughs. The timing, the delivery, creating these memorable characters, but we're too busy laughing to see the skill.
Yep, see the humor, miss the artistry. The punchline, not the craft.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we're back, we'll go even deeper. Explore the psychology behind these judgments. Stick with us.
And we're back. You know, this whole thing, it really makes you think how quickly we form these opinions about people, especially when it comes to intelligence. Like, we all become armchair psychologists or something.
That's what's so fascinating about it, this snap judgment thing. It's not just about actors. It's like built into how we think, part of being human.
So are you saying our brains are wired to just stereotype? That's kind of a bummer.
Not stereotype exactly, but
Yeah.
simplify, yeah. Brains are complex, but also efficient. They create shortcuts, to process information fast. But those shortcuts, sometimes they lead to bias, assumptions that aren't really true. Okay, so when we're watching actors, how does that play out? I mean, yeah, we know it's acting, but it's still so easy to think, oh, that ditzy character. The actor must be kind of ditzy too.
It's a classic case of what they call the fundamental attribution error. Big word, but basically we put too much weight on personality to explain behavior. We don't think enough about the situation.
So, we forget there's a script, a director, a whole team creating that performance. We just see the actor and boom, judgment made.
Exactly. And it goes beyond the role itself. It's how they're portrayed off screen, too. The
Yeah.
media plays a big part in that.
Oh yeah, the tabloids, gossip magazines, social media,
Yeah,
they're all feeding into those perceptions, right?
absolutely. And let's be real, those narratives often focus on the juicy stuff, the scandals, the things that confirm what we already think.
Right. Like if an actor's known for partying, saying goofy things, being a little different, that gets labeled as, oh, they must not be too smart.
Hmm.
But then if they're serious, private, it's, oh, they're loose, difficult. It's like a no-win situation.
It is. That's why we got to be careful, with media especially. Can't just absorb it all, got to question it, look for the other side of the story.
Right. So how do we break free from these mental shortcuts, these biases? It seems like they're so deeply rooted.
It takes work, for sure, but it starts with awareness. Just knowing we all have biases, that's the first step. Then we can start to challenge them.
So being more mindful, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
of how we're thinking.
That's it. And also, seek out different perspectives. Don't rely on just one source, Read interviews, documentaries, listen to podcasts like this one.
Huh. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's about getting the whole picture, not just the bits and pieces we're fed.
And when you do that, you realize actors are way more complex than we think.
Okay, so thinking back to the actors we've talked about, is there one who really exemplifies how wrong these snap judgments can be?
Jim Carrey's a great example. Yeah, he's hilarious, but there's so much more to him. He's an artist, paints, writes. He's talked openly about his struggles with depression, his spiritual side.
He even wrote a novel, right? I remember reading this interview. He was talking about how painting and writing, it's how he processes things, There's a depth there that goes way beyond those funny characters.
Exactly. And his career, it shows he's not afraid to push boundaries. He's always evolving.
It's kind of inspiring, actually, like a reminder that we can all grow, change, even when people try to put us in a box.
Powerful stuff. Never underestimate anyone's potential, right?
Okay, before we get to our final thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier. The media's role in all this, how they shape our perceptions, create these narratives.
Huge point. The media is always changing, but one thing stays the same.
Hmm.
The stories we consume, they have a real impact on how we see things.
And those stories,
Yeah.
well, they're not always designed to be accurate.
Yeah.
Often it's about profit, entertainment.
Think about celebrity gossip, how it's presented. It's all competition, drama.
Who's hotter? Who's richer? Who's falling apart? It's so superficial.
It's like we're being trained to value that superficial stuff over what really matters.
And that hurts everyone, not just actors. It creates this culture of judging, comparing. We start measuring ourselves against these impossible standards.
So we got to be picky about what we consume,
Yeah.
Find sources that are reliable, that care about getting it right.
And remember, what we see on screen, in magazines, online, often it's a carefully crafted image, not the whole truth.
It's about media literacy, being aware of the bias, the agendas behind the information.
All right, covered a lot of ground here. Psychology, the media, challenging those assumptions. Ready for some final thoughts.
Definitely. Some really valuable insights here.
But before that, want to leave our listeners with one last question, something to really think about.
Love it. A little food for thought.
Here it is. If we're so quick to judge actors based on roles and what we see in the media, how often are we doing that with everyone else in our lives?
Wow, that's a good one. Makes you think, right? Are we really seeing people or just our own assumptions?
Exactly. And the more aware we are of that, the more open and understanding we can be. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Hope you found it as interesting as I did.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious and remember,
There's always more than meets the eye. We're back, and man, this whole conversation, it's got me thinking about how we see people, Like those optical illusions, same image, totally different depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, I get that. And just like with illusions, gotta work to change your view, see past those first impressions.
Right. So, wrapping up, let's try to nail down what we learned, key takeaways about actors and this whole intelligence thing.
Well, I think the big one is acting. It's an art. Takes intelligence, empathy, understanding people.
So, a character's not smart doesn't mean the actor's not smart.
Exactly. And got to be careful about those media stories, the ones that simplify, make stereotypes.
Tabloids, gossip, that stuff. Entertainment first, not always the truth.
For sure. And this might be the most important. Actors, they're people, just like us. Complex, different sides to them. Can't judge their intelligence by one role, one quote, one red carpet moment.
It's about seeing the person, not just the persona, the human being behind the performance.
This has been, I don't know, really eye-opening. Makes you appreciate acting more and the stuff actors deal with.
I agree. Hopefully our listeners will too. View the whole industry differently and the people in it.
That's a great point. But before we go, want to leave everyone with something to think about. One last idea.
Always good to have something to chew on, right?
Okay, here it is. If we're so easily fooled by how actors seem on screen, by the stories we hear, what about the rest of our lives? Are we doing the same thing with people we meet every day?
Whoa, yeah. Makes you think about those snap judgments we make, those biases we don't even realize. Are we seeing people clearly?
Exactly. And if we can be more aware of that, maybe we can be more open, more understanding.
It's about recognizing we all have blind spots, ways our thinking can be off.
And the more we know that, the better we can treat each other, right?
Beautifully said.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Hope you learned something new, had some fun thinking about all this.
It's been great.
Until next time, stay curious, keep asking questions, and always remember, there's more to people than we see at first glance.